Hi guys, Tugger here with a new video, and this video will be my unhinged PvP guide video for Arms Warriors, and I'm very excited about that build. It is in my top 2 most favorite builds until now. I play like around 5-6 builds in total. I already talked about 3 builds, which is the Bleed, the Mortal Strike damage build, and the Fatality build. If you want to check that out, please, in the description there is a link. You can click on that link, see the guide. You will see in the comments also the code, so you can actually paste it on your character and play it for yourself. But in this video, you will see in the comment section below the unhinged code, so you will see that you can paste it on your character and play it for yourself. It's a very fun build. I'm going to explain you how it is actually fun in this video. I'm going to cover about stats, going to cover about build and the flexible talents. I'm going to talk about the strength and weaknesses of that build and the rotation, which is not as simple as other classes, like for example Fury, where it's rampage, blah 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 blah. Here it is pretty much like methodical. You're going to have a lot of fun with Arms Warriors, and please believe in the Arms Dream. If Mitch Jones believes in the Arcane Dream, I believe in the Arms Dream, so please join the Arms Army. Anyways, let's start with this video. I'm very excited. Little announcement. Start of season 1 is very soon. You might have seen this video after the season 1 started, but I'm going to regroup all the information into one big video. I'm not going to cover all the builds into one video. That's not going to be possible, but I'm going to refer to those videos where I'm going to say Unhinged is great versus those comps. Fatality build is great if you're playing that comp versus that comp. And I'm going to try to give you like specific ideas on which builds you can and should play versus specific comps, specific occasions, specific PvP modes. Of course, you can do whatever you want, and that's the beauty about Arms. It is very fun, very flexible, and have loads of builds that a lot of classes are actually jealous of, and Arms Warriors is just great. Anyways, let's start the video right now with the stats. And I must say, the stats are still the same. I'm going for crit, then haste, then mastery, and of course we are going to stack versatility. We go for 10% speed, and you can even go with the talents for 15%, but it depends on situations if you really need it or not. But I'm going to cover a bit the gems and the enchants. So I'm very cheap. I only have 2 sockets, but I go for stamina and versatility. Again, very cheap because you could buy better gems. But I go for stamina and versatility for now because I feel like stacking versatility is still nice. But stamina is still always nice to have, a bit more health. If you could survive even by 1% of because of an ability, it can really save your life. Anyways, speed enchant on the cloak, so waking stats on the chest. It is straight just primary stats. Bracers, speed bracers, very nice. For belt, hands you have nothing. Legs, you have first armor kit, which is stamina and primary stats, very nice to have as well. Plains Runner's Breeze, which is actually just speed on your boots, so you can have 10% just because of those enchants, which is also again very nice. It replaces all those speed gems that you had in Shadowlands. Again, I'm going to repeat, very nice. Rings, I go for versatility, and there's a world where you could go for double crit ring, so you take the crafted ring and the honor ring, so you can have max crit, or you can even go for both haste if you really want to play haste. I found crit very satisfying and also very fun to play around, because if you can crit a lot, the surprise damage that it comes because of it is actually very lethal to the enemy. They don't really I would say count on getting crit. So if you can crit the enemy, it can just jump the HP from 100 to 15 and to 0. So I guess haste is still good, but I can compensate it with other talents and other stuff to actually play around it. I do play with the unused trinket because it just pairs up very well with Bladestorm, with Avatar, or with Colossus Smash, and also with Spear of Passion. So you can actually just play around it and have a lot of fun with it. I still have the enchant Burning Writ because I'm very cheap again, but I might change it very soon to Sophic Writ or the Sophic Devotion, which is basically a chance on having extra primary stats. And extra primary stats is always nice because it's basically having 10% more stats if you're counting on the PvP modifiers. So it's quite nice. Anyways, let's talk about the builds right now. The build is actually very nice. I'm very in love with that build. Right now I am spec'd for BGs. I'm going to give you the flexible talents if you want to go arenas or world PvP or whatever. So on the class tree, we don't have intervene, but you can go for intervene, right? You don't need to sacrifice a lot of talents to go intervene because it's quite easy to get. If you want to get intervene, it's very easy to do. You can just either remove rallying cry, you can remove bitter immunity, or you can remove pain and gain, or you can remove fast footwork. So in some instances where you see that you're not getting kited a lot because it's melee versus melee, you can remove fast footwork and go for intervene. Or if you're playing versus a lot of casters that actually like reduce your movement speed, and intervene doesn't do a lot of for you because it's physical damage, you can remove intervene and go for fast footwork. Or if you feel like in BGs you want to have regen whenever you're done with fighting and you have no healers in your team or no heal bot or whatever, just remove fast footwork and go for second wind. If you feel like you want extra oomph on your rallying cry, you can even go for inspiring presence. Again, there's a few occasions where you do not take intervene. It is, for example, if you're playing versus caster cleaves, because caster cleaves, you do not get any actual benefit from intervene except just a charge to your ally, which is not really needed because often than not they will not like go in melees versus the healer. So there's not really a lot of benefit to intervene at that point. But if you're playing versus melees, I think intervene is probably one of the best, if not the best, defensive that you can actually apply to other allies. Be wary. Sometimes you can get killed through intervene because you intervene your ally and he gets literally decimated, but everything is going to you and you're going to die because of it, because you don't have safeguard anymore. They counter it from shadowlands. So again, I think I really like this build because I do play it for certain circumstances. I'm going to talk about it in the strength and weaknesses of that build. But I really like how it's set up right now. Intervene, it's nice, but if you're playing versus casters, which is actually very, very often at the moment, you don't really need it. And if you're not in BGs, you don't really have a lot of value on second wind in arenas. Often or not, there's a dot on you or whatever, and you cannot really utilize it correctly. But the important things are basically going for Blade Master's Torment, which gives you a extra Blade Storm whenever you're doing Avatar, which is again something that you want to go for because the build is literally unhinged and you want to do actually unhinged Blade Storms while you're doing Blade Storms, and it does crazy amounts of damage whenever you have like all or everything aligned. And to be honest, you don't really even need to align everything because it just does some crazy damage overall. You play with Spear of Bastion because it's just too good to pass, especially if Piercing Verdict. Sometimes it can crit for a lot, like 75k for example, by itself. And then you have dot component, like the AoE component to it. Elysian Might, which increases your critical strike damage and also the duration, is still very valuable. So for me, Elysian Might and Piercing Verdict are best. You could take Spear of Bastion only and remove like those two, and I would say you can even remove like a defensive, like for example, I don't know, you don't want to play with fast footwork, you could maybe, but I would never do that, but go for wall strikes and maybe Thunderous Roar. But why would you do that? I feel like you would have a lot more success just by going straight to a lot of better improvement to Spear of Bastion and go for fast footwork or any other defensive that you have available to you. Now let's talk about the arms tree. And the arms tree is still pretty cookie cutter. from the top to and also the bottom, the middle of the tree. There's a few things that you can move just based on the points that you can spend on the top and the middle half of the tree. Stormwall is something that is good versus melees, something that is good versus people in BGs. So in BGs, it's always going to be valuable because there is always a melee on you that is actually going to proc that heal. But I can understand that you don't want to play with Stormwall, and you could maybe play with Rend if you so desire. Me myself, I find myself not pressing Rend whenever I do that. I tested a lot. I feel like Rend doesn't do as much damage in PvP without all those modifiers like Bloodborne and such. Like I talked about the PvP in the PvP guide of Bleed, the Bleed build. So for me, it's not really as valuable. I can also go for, let's say, Blood Surge, but I feel like I'm not like rage starved to a point where I need that extra regen. So I feel like it's still Stormwall is something that you can go for without any problems. If you really want, you can go maybe something else, like something like Cleave. Well, I would never do that, but if you really want to, why not? But do not do that. It's like PvE, and even then you're not going to press it. You could go for maybe Skull Splitter, but then there is no value to Tide of Blood and Rend. Maybe you can remove Depth Experience and go for removing Stormwall, and you go for this, right? That would be your build. So it's a semi-bleed build, but you should understand that the bleed build doesn't do a lot of damage. Like just with this, you need actual bloodletting to actually improve the duration and the crit chance, and also the bloodborne to increase your dot damage. And right now, you won't do a lot of damage. It will be like fluffy, that's all. And you're also going to remove the deep wounds effect, which basically improves your damage onto the target. So I'm not really a fan of it with this build. So this is my main build, to be honest. Even like Stormwall, it's very hard to take it out. Because I do appreciate it to have versus melees, but versus casters, I guess you can just remove it and go for bleed. Because sometimes you just lose a bit of uptime, but it's not really my fan favorite thing to do. But this is pretty much my build. I'm going to go through the important stuff. We take critical thinking, sharpened blades, and execution's precision to improve your execute, your crit chance, and your maul strike execute damage from sharpened blades, and your execution's precision that can improve with also overpower. So you have like 17% times 2, and then overpower, which is 15% times 2, since it's got nerfed in PvP. And then you have your maul strike, which is now unnerved, so it does a lot of damage. Overall, maul strike is going to do more damage than previously, and you can all pair it with your unhinged blade storm that I'm going to discuss about it in the rotation section. Unhinged, what does it do? If you're new to Dragonflight and you haven't played Shadowlands, basically whenever you're doing Blade Storm, you automatically cast a total of 2 Moral Strike on the enemy. What's good is it is also doable with Sweeping Strikes. So you can do Sweeping Strikes, Blade Storm, and you will cleave them with Moral Strike. Also, it consumes overpower stacks, it consumes the execution effect, and I think it also consumes the Sharpened Blade PvP talent. Normally it does, but I sometimes use it and it doesn't get applied for some reason. But we will see. I'm going to do it on the PvP dummy, and you will see it with me. But overall, you can also keep your sharpened blade for another occasion. You can also just do a planned moral strike and then overpower. And if you have an execute, just do an execute. If you have 2 executes, just do 2 executes. Spear of Bastion, Avatar, like Colossus Smash, and then Blade Storm. And normally you should die if the healer is CC'd. But it has a lot of great synergies. Overall, everything is there to actually improve your unhinged damage, and you can do 2 unhinged Blade Storm back to back. You can also do that, but you can also just do Spear of Bastion Avatar, which is going to do the unhinged damage from your memory of the Blade Master's Torment, which is actually very nice. It does a lot of damage, and then you can just sit back, do Colossus Smash because he had probably popped CDs for that occasion. You do Colossus Smash and then Blade Storm with all the modifiers from Overpower and Executioner's Precision. You will probably kill it in a few seconds if the healer is CC'd, or if you're actually facing the healer and you stunned the healer. So there's a lot of great things going on. We play with Depth Experience. Those 2 points, you can really put it anywhere if you so desire. To be honest, I like the Tactician procs, I like the Mastery buff, although Mastery stacking is not as good as before. Right now, I feel like having a bit more overpower procs is still nice. So I'm very happy with the current build. Let's talk now about strength and weaknesses. No, let's talk about PvP talents. So I'm not going to talk about all the PvP talents, but I'm going to talk about the PvP talents I'm using right now with Unhinged. So we do use Storm of Destruction. Again, you want to have more Blade Storms. It will be a 1-minute CD. It will apply mortal wounds, but it will always apply mortal wounds because you have Unhinged. So you will have the deep wounds effect with your Blade Storm, and you will probably just have a lot of fun with it, right? Like the healing reduction, everything around is just too good with Storm of Destruction, and it just pairs so well with your Blade Master Storm, and so you have more avatars, more like kill pressure. We play with Sharpened Blade because, again, improving your mortal strike damage is always nice, but also just the reduced healing taken to 50%, so it becomes pretty much the best healing reduction in the game. But of course, it's only a 60-second duration and then becomes just a 25% healing reduction on your mortal strike. But I really like it because whenever you're pressuring, you're doing a sharpened blade, you don't really need to stun because that's going to be a whole other video with tips and tricks. But sometimes not stunning while you're doing your sharpened blade is maybe the best like solution, and then doing a stun or a fear or a CC gives extra pressure because of that. So again, it's another video where I'm going to talk briefly about tips and tricks in solo shuffle, and this is one of those tricks and tips. Demolition is a great PvP talent because I do take Wrecking Throw. Again, depends on who you're facing in the arenas. If you're not facing versus warlocks or people that have shields, you don't have a lot of value with it, so you can just opt out and go for Warbringer or Disarm or whatever. But I've faced a lot of warlocks these days, a lot of shadow priests, a lot of paladins that have the explosive shield, right? So you can pop it off whenever you are actually running away so that you don't get the damage. There's a lot of ways to actually do a lot of damage, right? And Wrecking Throw is one of them. So having a 23 seconds CD on a shield break is actually very good, especially versus warlocks. So I like to play that way. What more? Those are the PvP talents I'm using mostly in PGs, and in arenas I can just opt demolishing out depending on comps we're facing. But I'm going to talk about PvP talents in my definitive guide very soon, probably start of season 1. Alright, let's talk about strength and weaknesses. The strength of that build is actually something that you will lack with your previous builds, which is actually extra mobility. You would think Blade Storm is not really a mobile spell to use, but it is actually very mobile because you don't really get snared, you don't get rooted, you don't get disarmed, you don't get CC'd. You're actually free to do whatever you want while you're doing a Blade Storm. It's a very good ability, and I'm really liking Blade Storm. And sometimes whenever I'm not playing Blade Storm, I do feel an emptiness because I'm so in habit. It's a routine now to have Blade Storm as an arms warrior, and not having it is a bit harder to play with it. So it's also a strength. It is also easier to play this build than the previous builds. Like for example, the build with the Bleed build, you don't have Blade Storm, so it's very hard to play around it. The Fatality build, you don't have Blade Storm, so it's very hard to play around it. The Mortal Strike damage build has Blade Storm, and it is also easier to play around it. So you see, there's a pattern there. I really like how it plays out, and I don't know, it's also very fun, so I guess it's also a strength. It's one of the most fun builds to play, and it seems like it's not fun because you don't really have new things like in Shadowlands you had Unhinged, But trust me, with all the modifiers, with all the unnerved moral strike damage and such, it's very fun to actually do an unhinged moral strike because you feel like their HP is really dropping fast. And with sweeping strikes, you can just cleave them. And that's also one of those builds where I'm playing with Warbreaker because if I can get a Spear of Bastion on 2 enemies, a sweeping strikes, and then a Blade Storm with, let's say, a big avatar proc, it does insane amount of damage that someone is going to die if they are not going to use defensives. If they do use defensives, guess what? You have another avatar with another unhinged proc. So I guess it's also very fun to play around. You can also play with, of course, the blunt instruments PvP like talent to actually offset the difficulty to play versus casters. So if you play versus casters, you cannot regroup them. Just do the extra damage on closer smash and the extra duration. It will be more valuable to you at least than Warbreaker. So I really like this, and that's also a very like good strength in my opinion. The weakness is you don't really have the surprise damage from Fatality, for example, or you don't have the bleed one-shot potential that the bleed build has. So there is a bit of differences there. You don't have the recklessness proc from Wallace Torment because you do play with Blade Master's Torment. So that's also negative, I guess, because if you are like already in habit of having a lot of crit whenever you're doing Avatar, right now it will be a bit less. In general, I really like this build. I don't find a lot of weaknesses to it, to be honest. Even versus melees, I find it very easily applicable to actually do Warbreaker and do insane cleave damage. And versus casters, it just gives you more mobility. A lot of casters can just slow you, and Blade Storm actually like helps you with that. So people run away, and you can easily just wreck them because of Blade Storm. So I'm very happy with this build. Now, if you want to talk about the rotation, I'm going to talk right now. The rotations are still quite the same, to be honest. So you have still always the objective to stack with overpowers, and then you're going to do some executions with sudden death, for example. Or if they are low, you can just execute and you get some procs for execution precision, which is in total 35% increased damage on Moral Strike. And whenever you feel like you're ready to do a lot of damage, you can just do Colossus Smash into Spear of Bastion, and then you go for Avatar, for example, and it will do insane amounts of damage. And you will see, I'm not pressing Moral Strike at all. I did 2 Moral Strikes with the Unhinged proc, and I did 170k normal hit, and then I did a 30k or 39k normal hit, just with one Blade Storm. And Blade Storm itself did also a lot of damage. You see 27k per crit, and normal hit was around 12k. So you see there is a lot of potential there. And the first Moral Strike that you're going to do will do a lot of damage because you will have the overpower procs. You will have the Executioner's sentence, the Executioner's precision proc. And just in general, you can just also do, again, a Warbreaker with a Sharpened Blade, and then again a Blade Storm, and you'll see that the damage is really nice. In general, it will kill enough targets to have a lot of fun, and often your normal hits will be around 50 and 60k, and whenever you're going to crit, sometimes someone is going to die very quickly with a 90k crit, for example. It is not going to be the biggest Moral Strike possible, because it is just not like this, but I mean, every time you're going to do a Blaze Storm, people are going to actually scream for their lives because it does insane amounts of damages, and especially if they are like super close to their friends and you have like a Spear of Bastion, just don't hesitate to do a Colossus Smash into a Spear of Bastion into a Avatar. Because Avatar procs Blade Storm, you don't want to do Avatar with Colossus Smash because then you will not have the possibility to do Spear of Bastion, right? So be careful of that. That's a adjustment. Please do not like do a one-shot macro with Avatar and Colossus Smash, because then you will not be able to do Spear of Bastion. Or you do Spear of Bastion first and then Colossus Smash and Avatar, but you will miss the damage from Colossus Smash and Deep Wounds for your Spear of Bastion. So I would not suggest to do that. In general, I'm very happy with this build. It's very methodical. Like it's very hard to say like you need to do this, you need to do that, because it depends on situations, right? I give you the puzzles, and you need to actually make like a great puzzle with it, right? If you feel like the situation occurs where they don't have a trinket, you want to stormbolt into Warbreaker, into Bladestorm, someone is going to die because of the crit that you can produce. And just with Bladestorm and Mortal Strike, you can just do insane amount of damage. Like I created for 138k. I had like maybe one stack of Execute if I'm remembering correctly. So if you're critting, you're going to do insane amount of damage. And I'm going to show you one more time the burst rotation, the ideal burst rotation. So I'm going to do Avatar, Bladestorm as well. And you will see the amount of damage I'm going to do. The more targets that are near the main target, the better. If it's not possible, again, the single target pressure that you can have with Bladestorm is very big because nobody can peel you off of it. They need to use DRs. They cannot stun you, they cannot fear you, they cannot disarm you while you're doing Bladestorm. So people cannot escape from it. So anyways, again, you're charging in. Overpower, you have one sudden death proc, boom, and what you're going to do, very simple, Colossus Smash into Spear of Bastion into Avatar. And you're going to do insane amount of damage, and then you're going to stun, you have a sudden death proc, and overpower, and then you're doing another Bladestorm. And just this pressure is enough to actually kill someone. And then you're going to do execute because you killed the target. And basically, you hit it for 86k because you had like one sudden death proc. So it's 17% increased damage with 2 overpowers. You have a minimum damage of 19. For some reason, it's very low, but you have an average of 44k with 5 hits. So we didn't do like a second Mortal Strike. We did only one casted Mortal Strike. We did a few executes because it's low HP, right? But I'm like imagining I get a certain death proc. We get like 2 Bladestorms. One of it is proc because of Avatar, which is basically 170k in total. If you created a lot more, it would be more damage. If you crit it less, it will be a bit less. Spear of Bastion by themselves does 68k crit, and the dot component is very high. It's also very interesting to have. The wounds, again, it can crit for 11k. Again, in PvP, it's a bit less because versatility, because of the art. But you have the possibilities to do a lot of damage with it. Warbreaker does a bit less damage because, again, you can play with Colossus Smash, the blunt instruments. You have a lot more damage with it. I'm going to do one last time with the blunt instruments. Okay, that's if you're wanting to play versus casters and they are not going to regroup, right? So going to overpower. You have a sudden death proc. You have sharpened blade. Colossus Smash into Spear of Bastion into Avatar. You have the proc of Bladestorm, and then you're going to do another execute because it's very low. You're going to do one overpower and then do another Bladestorm. You can also just stack it more and more, but it really depends on the occasion. I think I lagged a bit there, but I have like 50k DPS, right? So whenever you're going to crit, it will be noticeable. I did like a crit of 191k, and it is not even my max damage. I only have one sudden death proc, 2 overpowers. Again, many occasions to actually do big amounts of damages, and I'm very happy with this build. It's really great. If you're going to do a Bladestorm and you crit for even 120k, it doesn't matter. It doesn't need to be 150k, it doesn't need to be 200k. If you critted one more strike for 120k, like 120k, it is going to be like decimating the enemy team. And imagine if it has like a sweeping strikes. Like healers cannot heal that, except maybe an evoker because they have CDs for it. But a Holy Priest will die from it. A Disc Priest will die from it. A Resto Shaman is definitely dying from it. A Holy Paladin will have to just bubble for it. So you have a lot of ways to do a lot of damage, right? And again, it does insane amount of damage. Like, again, right now I have a 85k normal hit with Mortal Strike. So it always really depends on the amounts of crit that you can produce as an arms warrior, right? You have 26% with my build. If it's higher, it's better. If it's lower, then you will notice that you will do a lot less crits. But it depends about your playstyle. I prefer to have a lot of crits. I can understand why people would like to spam haste, but if you spam crit, you will have a lot more fun with it. Anyways, thank you for watching this video. I really appreciate you. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done that yet. Be sure to stay safe. We will catch each other very soon with the next video. Have a great day. Bye.
I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit, I got no love